of this term of our new council. So welcome to all the members of the committee. Welcome to our guests who have come to assist us with the items on our agenda this evening. And thank you all our officers and our democratic services team and our legal support as well. Thank you very much. And welcome to the public, the public up there. Hello. Just remind everyone to do use their microphones because not only helps us here in the room, some of us are getting a little bit mutton in our old age, but also it means that people online can hear us as well, and they won't be able to otherwise. So item 1, substitutions and apologies and substitutions. We have none. I think everybody is here and is supposed to be here. And got the minutes from the last meeting. I appreciate there's not many of us left, I think, probably just 2 of us left that were here at that meeting. But I just did want to make a just quick alteration. Page 8, which is page 4 of the minutes, regarding the floating bridge. So it's a 3rd paragraph down. That should say 700,000. So it should be a K and to 800K income there. So that alteration has been made in the minutes, which I'll sign. So were there any other comments on the minutes? Councillor Stewart, so I'm just looking at you particularly because you were here.
I had a look through. I couldn't see any major elements, and thank you for spotting that one. I should have spotted that immediately. But I think we probably it seems to have covered everything that we did speak about. We did. Okay. It was a comprehensive meeting.
Lovely, thank you. Are you happy for me to approve these minutes then? It's a true record. You are allowed to vote even if you aren't here. So thank you, thank you. I'll just sign those then. Thank you. Has anyone got any direct declarations of interest, any matters in this evening? No. I've just got one. It's deep in the papers that are very hard to read, but I live in Victoria Road, where one of the car parks that's mentioned in the car park report. However, I don't have a permit at said car park, so I just wanted to be absolutely clear on that one. Everyone else, thank you. So I have got some public question time. I do have two questions that I'm going to read out. So I've got a question from Mr. David Wistance to myself. Is David Wistance up there? No, okay. I'll read the question. From the meeting papers, we see the highways PFI remains rated high. There are 6 vacancies in the council team. The network manager post may be removed, and the contractual gap for geological failures is reported to have been reached. The question is, please define what is the council's current estimated financial exposure for each location scheme affected, together with a date for publishing a fully costed mitigation plan for each of them. This is a response to myself, but clearly it's very technical, so it has been prepared by our officers. Thank you for your question. The Isle of Wight is home to the largest inhabited active landslip complex in Northern Europe. Ground movement within this area is long-standing natural geological process and represents significant challenges for the management and maintenance of the highway network. When the highways PFI contract commenced in 2013, provision was included within the contract to fund the repair of damage of the highway network arising from geological and geotechnical failures within defined zones. Details of these zones are contained within Schedule 9 of the Highways PFI contract documentation, which is available on the Isle of Wight Council website. The funding allocated for geological and geotechnical events was subject to a financial cap and was intended at the time of the contract award to support such works throughout the 25-year contract period. This allocation was subsequently exhausted during the works required to restore and reopen Leeson Road. As a result, the council is now responsible for meeting the costs of any future monitoring, investigation and remediation works associated with geological and geotechnical failures within the identified PFI zones. The Council's current approach is focused on monitoring, data collection and evidence gathering across the active landslip area. This work is enabling a more comprehensive understanding of ground movement and associated risks to the highway network. The information obtained will support the development of robust business cases to secure external investment, including opportunities through the mayoral, regional and central government funding streams to improve the resilience of the transport network in South White. Given the dynamic nature of the landslip environment and the uncertainty associated with future ground movement, the Council considers that maintaining a comprehensive programme of monitoring and investigation represents the most appropriate use of public resources at this stage. This approach provides up-to-date evidence that enables the Council to identify priorities, target interventions effectively, and commission the specialist technical support required to develop funding proposals and future resilience strategies for the area. This evidence-led approach will ensure that decisions on future investment are informed by the latest available data and aligned with the areas of greatest need and risk, and that will be sent to Mr. Wistance. I've got another question, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive response, Mrs. Love. So I've got a question from Alison Arnold. Is Alison up there? No. Alison Arnold has written to me, so please can you help with the timeline on the proposed yellow lines put in by Brading Town Council and Island Roads for Coach Lane and Brading. The road has over the past few years become more dangerous due to the amount of permanently worked on vehicles and poor visibility. Due to the speed and rat run that the road has become, we and most of our residents along Coach Lane are frightened each time we come out of our drives. We cannot see vehicles coming from both directions and we cannot be seen by others. Vehicles come at a great speed off the roundabout and cut across lanes. Frequently, cars pass in one lane as one cannot see around the blind bend. Accidents waiting to happen. Island Roads keep saying they have no news on the yellow lines and the MP of Brading isn't getting very far. We don't even have a reference number, which I'm sure we should have. Are we just being fobbed off? Please, can you help? Again, I've gone to Mrs. Love from Director of Highways because it goes quite technical, as in the process that's being followed. And also I have contacted our local member for the area, which is Councillor Bacon. Have had a conversation with him, and he is on top of it and dealing with it. So I have gone to local member, haven't just bypassed them. It's very important they're involved, and also completely new about it. Thank you for your question. The response. Thank you for your question. Any suggestions for changes to the highway network are recorded on the Network Integrity Register, the NIR, which allows the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads to assess them for potential inclusion in future annual capital programmes. As you will appreciate, there are many requests for highway improvements across the island, and available funding means that projects must be carefully prioritised. Your requests will be considered along others of a similar nature and assessed based on factors such as need, community benefit and value for money. At present, the Isle of Wight Council generally reserves funding for traffic regulation orders, TROs, but there is a clear and pressing safety need, such location with a history of collisions. Requests for measures such as WL lines are therefore normally considered as part of the relevant district-wide TRO review process, ensuring all requests within the area can be reviewed and prioritised together. The Council typically carries out 2 district TRO reviews each year, and District 3, which includes the Brading area, is currently scheduled for review during the first part of 2027. Your requests will be included for consideration as part of that review. Thank you. I've got another question from Mr. Steve Cockett. Is Mr. Cockett up there? No. Right. Central government provided £25 million of electric vehicle pavement channels grant. The headline objective being the electric vehicle EV pavement channels grant funds local authorities to install cross pavement channels in England. This will support residents without access to off-street parking to charge their EVs at home and benefit from cheaper domestic tariffs. Local authorities reportedly received £114,780 from this fund. Can the committee please provide an update on any planning related to that funding, most importantly regarding the processes residents will need to undertake to apply and the expected timescales for the scheme rollout? Response from me, and we're obviously working with officers again. The council is currently developing a pilot programme and associated policy framework to support the installation of cross-pavement charging solutions. Whilst the resident application process and rollout timetable are still being finalised, work is underway to enable eligible residents without off-street parking to apply for support through a managed pilot scheme. The council is developing a pilot scheme to trial the installation of cross-pavement channels across the island, understand the practical and financial implication delivery, gather resident feedback and operational experience, inform the development of a future Isle of Wight cross-pavement solutions policy. The pilot will be designed to ensure the investment is resident-focused, equitable, data-led, and directed towards areas where the greatest benefit can be achieved. The resident application process is currently developing this process as part of the pilot programme. It's anticipated that residents wishing to participate are required to submit an application to the council, demonstrate they do not have access to off-street parking, demonstrate ownership, lease or intended purchase of electric vehicle, or evidence of an intention to transition to electric vehicle, confirmation that domestic charging installation is available or can be installed at the property, consent to a site assessment to determine whether a cross-pavement solution can be installed safely and without adversely affecting highway users. Applications will be assessed against agreed eligibility criteria, available funding and highway safety considerations. Full details of the application process will be published before the pilot scheme is launched. Whilst detailed delivery dates remain subject to approval, it is anticipated that further details regarding eligibility and the application process will be developed following completion of the LEVI mobilisation phase. Work is currently underway to develop the pilot scheme, delivery model and application process. The council's immediate priority is the mobilisation and delivery of local electric vehicle infrastructure, the LEVI programme, which represents the council's principal EV infrastructure investment programme. Mobilisation activity is expected to take place between August and October 2026. Following this period, the council will focus on developing and implementing the electric vehicle pavement channel grant pilot scheme. We anticipate mobilisation of the LEVI programme between August and October, development of the pilot scheme and the cross-payment pilot scheme and policy framework during the completion of the LEVI mobilisation, publication of further details, including the eligibility criteria and application arrangements following approval of the pilot programme, launch of an initial application process and commencement of pilot installations thereafter. Evaluation of the pilot to inform the development of a longer cross-pavement solutions policy for the Isle of Wight. The grant can be used towards eligible expenditure, including cross-pavement channel hardware, installation costs, licensing requirements, including Section 50 licenses where applicable, planning application fees. The council is currently setting the full cost of implementation to determine whether installations can be fully funded through the grant allocation, whether a resident contribution may be required. And that's the end of the written questions. Were there any oral questions from anyone in the public gallery? No, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to move on now to next part of our agenda, which is the decision. We've only got one decision this evening, and it's on pages 13 to 26, which is the process. I think that's important to remember, members. It's a process for disposal of low usage Isle of Wight council car parks. And Mrs. Lovely, do you want to introduce this? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee. So yeah, as Councillor Jones-Evan has said, at the previous committee meeting in March, we had a discussion about the disposal of car parks, and it was requested of officers to bring forward a report to have an outline process for you. So it doesn't circumnavigate the planning process, it merely gives you a framework in order to be able to decide that if there is a low usage car park, that you should you want to dispose of it, then you have an agreed framework in place in order to be able to do that. So if you've had a chance to read the report, obviously I won't go through the report stage by stage, but the recommendations of the report that we'd like, excuse me, that I'd like you to consider, and obviously funnel questions through the chair, are that you note the summary of the parking delivery plan evidence and the variation in car park usage across the island. So obviously the car park delivery plan is attached. I think it's about 130 pages. So if you haven't read all of it, that's understandable. The committee approves the proposed local member review process for identifying, assessing and consulting on car parks with consistently low usage and low strategic parking value. That you agree a proposal to dispose of, repurpose or redevelop a council car park must be supported by a site assessment, local member comments to reflect the views of the local community, financial and property appraisal, transport and accessibility assessment, and all equality and climate considerations that we would have to take into account, and that you delegate the authority to the relevant director in consultation with yourselves, the committee, the ward members, and our colleague services, property, legal and finance, to prepare a prioritised list of candidate sites for further review if you would like to take this motion forward. Contained within the report is the outline of the process. So it's a 5-stage process, a data review, which has been done through the initial car parking usage report, but we would undertake to provide you with figures on an annual basis of how the car parks along the island are used, usage figures, transaction figures, etc. Initial screening, then obviously we would bring that forward for your prioritisation, consultation, and then if appropriate, we would bring a decision report to this committee for final decision of that car park disposal. Obviously, we do have to balance that with the fact that a lot of the we would need the prioritisation in order to be able to identify those car parks that are still well used and provide that essential function for the community. And each of the car parks obviously contributes to the income, excuse me, of the council. So therefore, overall figures for income coming into the council from parking revenue would be adjusted for future budget years should you make the decision to dispose of a low performing car park. That's the report in summary, but I'm very happy to take questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Love. And eagle-eyed committee members will have seen that this data was dated in 2020. There already have been some changes already. For instance, there's one of the privately rented car parks that we have in New Street is now housing. As you can see, a really good housing scheme done by Prisoners Building Homes, which is fantastic for veterans. So yes, things have moved on, but obviously there's going to be an annual review of the car parks. That's sort of embedded in what we're looking at. So no doubt you'll have some comments on this this proposal. So anyone got anything to say on it at all? Yes, Councillor Pritchard and then Councillor Whelan.
Thank you. We wanted to maybe add into that or make it a bit clearer that parish and town councils to be, it says they can be consulted. We would like, it was optional, but we would like it to say that they would be consulted, so that it was, because even personally in my area, I have a car park that is run by the parish council. So there are a lot of them, they have a lot more local knowledge than even the ward councillor would have, because they are there on the dealing with those sort of areas day to day and know what use they have in the community. So I would just like it made clearer in there that they would be consulted, not may be consulted, as it were. So I'd like that to be added if the committee would agree, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that's within stage 4. So it's paragraph 16. Stage 4 says the committee can also decide to carry out. So you'd like that firmed up, would you? So the committee will carry out consultation or ask, or you could just cross that out and say consultation with town and parish councils will. So we'll just alter that one. Would that be okay? Is everyone happy with that?
Please, I think they would have that knowledge that perhaps nobody else would have, that operational day to day. So yes, please.
It's absolutely fine. Yeah. So everyone happy that we change that? Yeah. So I've got Councillor Whelan, then I've got Councillor Lope, then Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Is there a strategic review with regards to the car parks, obviously, because it is council land, if we are going to sell them off potentially or pass them on out of our control? Has that been incorporated into the potential corporate plan that we've been discussing in regards to development, future development for services and such, or passing it out on a commercial basis? Thank you.
I think I'll start and then I can always pass on to my colleague Alex, if necessary. So this is the framework simply for you to be able to make that decision. And then I guess as part of the decision, I would guess that you would be coming to us to ask to make that decision because you have an idea of what you would like to use that land for. So it almost works in reverse, particularly if you're having conversations with my colleagues in Regeneration and things like that, and have then cross-referenced that against the car park data. So this is the first step, and then if the intention is to use that for development or whatever purpose fits in with the objectives of the corporate plan, then it would obviously, we would work with colleagues in Regeneration and it would go through the planning process, etc.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, councillor Oakley and councillor Stewart.
Can I ask if the seasonality is going to be drawn into this? So we have some car parks in the Isle of Wight, particularly in the West Wight areas. We have lots of visitors. They may be quiet during the winter months, but essential during the summer for visitors coming to the island and beauty spots, etc., etc. So when you look at the general pattern of those car parks, you will take into account the seasonality of a visitor.
Absolutely, yeah. So all the car parks that we have within council control, we can drill down to monthly figures. So if you came to us and said, we'd like to know the usage on, you know, X car park, and obviously it was pretty empty from November to March, but then as soon as the spring came, there was high figures of usage, then that would all be reflected and you could take a proportionate decision based on that data.
And also events, individual events, we can go down on a daily basis. So you can look at events. So it could be one particular event a year is heavily used. That would influence the report. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. Can I just add to what Councillor Christian was saying? I think it's absolutely critical that parish town councils are brought in as early as possible. So where we talk about under recommendation 6, local members' comments to reflect the views of the local community, I think it would be appropriate, if possible, to ask parish and town councils directly early on. The overall idea of considering the parking estate is very helpful, and you know there's a lot of work being gone into this. But I think, as Councillor Christian has been saying, the parish councils and town councils will be directly concerned with these things and will often have local knowledge, which the ward councillor will have a limited amount of. I shouldn't admit that, should I?
Anyone else got anything to add to this at all? The committee. So I've got Councillor Cameron, and then Councillor Bow. I'll go on the committee first. I'll bring you in a minute. Yeah.
I just would like to know if it comes back to us, will all the data on all the parking on the car parks be actually updated? Because this is 2020, and since then there's been planning applications which have gone through actually relying on that parking, and there's been other places where it actually has lost. There's assumptions that there is plenty of on-street parking, which must not be treated as current evidence. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think this will be updated yearly, but yeah, you're right. The planning thing, I think that's mentioned there, isn't it? Planning.
Yeah, as part of the process, there will be an annual review put together of the car park usage. So that's stage 1 of the process. So to confirm that, that's the yes.
That wider question you asked about any planning applications that have, you know, mentioned, oh, we don't have to have so many car parks with development because it's a local car park nearby. That is relevant. So Councillor Bauer, would you like to ask a question?
It's going to go red. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a question about the appendix which has been provided to us. I was a little concerned as to how we establish what is a low use car park. At the moment, we have an appendix which says so much money's been taken at that car park and it's so much per space. We don't know how many spaces, but what we're doing at the moment is looking at how much money that car park's taken. But I know for a fact that Carisbrooke car park, for instance, early in the mornings, packed with parents dropping off children for school. People use it, use the toilet, go to shops. They're not buying any tickets. And what bothers me is it's a very high use car park, but we're saying it's low use. And I can't understand how we do that on just on a monetary value. It's the potential for that car park. If you took that car park away, the potential for families dropping off children for school, using the shop, using the toilets is gone. And what worries me at the moment, we're just looking at number of spaces and how much revenue that's brought in, which potentially could lead to a false conclusion, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I can absolutely tell you that Carisbrooke one will not appear on the final list because, as I say, the whole process looks at the whole use in a way. This is a way of starting the process, just looking at the numbers used. Obviously, we've got come car parks there. Well, in your ward, for instance, Royal Exchange, we have no data on. We don't know if it's highly used or not because it's free. Yes.
Well, yeah, Royal Exchange at the present time is near the site of the old school. Next door to that is a homeless shelter, and I think the rest of the school is being developed as a SEND school in the very near future. So that car park area might become essential for that development taking place.
So there's, I think
it's marked. Sorry, but it's marked on the appendix as being a high priority for redevelopment.
And that's why this was back in 2020. So again, that's why this annual review and looking at the holistically what's happening around these spaces is important. But I did actually have one more question. I don't know if I can get the answer today, but do we have any, this is a general car park question, I suppose, but do we have any car parks that are owned by us but leased out to others that aren't on this list? So I know we've got a couple there. There's like Victoria Road, one I mentioned. There's Harvey Road. I think they're actually controlled by property services and not by highways. So that's maybe a little bit more difficult. But I just wondered if there were any other car parks that we do actually own, but other people use. Maybe it could be a commercial part or commercial people that use them, and that come under the PFI for maintenance. I was just wondering if there was any that anyone knew of at all.
No, that is a comprehensive list.
There's no other car parks. There's no other car
Not to
parks
my
that we own.
knowledge, no. I did, because obviously that report was written a good few years ago, and then the request came fairly recently to consolidate it into a process. But I did go through it with our parking manager, and he confirmed that list was as it stands.
Because these are ones that we are running, aren't we? But I know there's other ones that we own, other people use. So for instance, there's one down.
He sent me the list, so
Yeah.
what I can do is circulate that round, and then feel free to review in your own time. But we did sit and do an exercise where we cross-referenced against what was in the report.
Yeah, because there's one down. I think it's a Gift for Nature one, but it's our land, but it's Gift for Nature. Run it down by the riverway, for instance, down by the river. There's little things like that, just to give members a holistic overview, especially so many new members, of actually what our assets are in total and who's using them and what is it costing us. Because we're, anyone who was at PFR the other week was probably had, woke up at 3 a.m. Every morning, wanting to have a cold shower with the situation with our finances. So it was just having that holistic view. That was all. Just while we're talking about car parks. So thank you. So members, if there's no more questions, so we'll do that. Happy to make that change at stage 4, where there will be a consultation with town and parish councils, local businesses and residents. So we're all satisfied with that. Then we've got the proposal is on page 14. So that's the recommendation that we note the parking delivery plan evidence and variation car park use across the island. The committee approves the proposal local member review process for identifying, assessing and consulting on car parks with consistently low usage or low strategic parking value. That the committee agrees that any proposal to dispose of, repurpose or redevelop a car park must be supported by a site assessment, local member comments to reflect the views of the local community, financial and property appraisal, transport and accessibility assessment, equality and climate considerations and appropriate public consultation. that the committee delegates authority to the relevant director in consultation with local ward members, property services, legal services and finance to prepare a prioritised list of candidate sites for further review with final decisions on disposal or change of use returned to the council's required governance route. But just do note that the initial list will come back to this committee. That's in
The list of car parks you'd like, that's fine.
I think that says it. Doesn't it?
I can send you the cross-reference list, and obviously if there are any queries from any members of the committee, then please do raise them and I will speak to Mark Downer about it, okay?
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. So have I got a proposer and seconder for this? Councillor Loke? Yeah, Councillor Whelan, thank you. All those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you very much. To look at the performance management now, so that's pages quarter four, so it's the end of the last financial year, pages 27 to 58. We have officers, key officers in the room. If you wanted to pick up on any of the items that have been raised there, and I know that Councillor Cameron, you had a couple of things that you wanted just to highlight for correction, I believe.
In the performance report, it says bus journeys were higher, then describes 1,761,793 as a 0.77% lower than the 1,748,254. The figures actually represent an increase of 13,539. Another one was cars were below target at 8,064 against 8,307, while the appendix gives an average of 7,908 against a target of 7,669 and marks the measure green.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's basically, it was on page 28, paragraph 7, it should say higher rather than lower, so that just needs changing. And the thing about the one card, I think sometimes the reports are written at different times, and they may not have finished the end of year calculations. Maybe I don't know if Mr. Means, whether you've got anything to say about that. I mean, the general direction is obviously green, so not worried about it. Just the differential in the numbers that have been given.
Yeah, I can comment on that for members and give them a little bit of an update where we are now. The overall, there's an overall increase in the last financial year in number of one cars, and that pattern is continuing into the next quarter as well. So it's a very positive view.
Anyone else got anything I'd like to ask about? Yes, Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. The services that we provide are fantastic. One Leisure, for example, is a cracking service. Have we ever, as a council, run a market test to make sure that the customer service that the customers are receiving are the best service that we can potentially give? So in business, we use mystery shopper system. Has that ever been used with our facilities to ensure that we are at the pinnacle of that delivery system in regards to the services that we provide on that list?
Hence.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, we've done a number of kind of satisfaction surveys with customers. We did do a leisure needs review, but it's probably true to say we haven't done that for a while.
That's really helpful. I mean, I suppose I should both say that we're one leisure card holders, gold stock. And I was there yesterday. Yeah, it's such a great service. But I think, and that was going to suggest actually when we get to the plan, but I might as well say it now, that I'd really like, if it's possible, Mr. Menz, for a committee, if they'd like to, have a tour of our One Leisure facilities and let's get underneath it. And maybe while we're over there, if we go to Sandham, maybe we can also go to Dinosaur Isle as well. I just think it'd be really good if we can get underneath our services, really get to know them, because these are important touch points for the people that don't necessarily come to us. They don't come to us in crisis. They're people probably like me, before I came a councillor, thought the council gave me parking tickets and took my bins away, and that was it. But these are really important touch points throughout people's lives as well. You're taking your child there for swimming lessons, or you're just looking after your own health. But I think it's okay if your committee would like to do that. Yeah, we'll arrange that then. We'll check our diaries. I was just while we're on one leisure, apologies, I just want to come and just write something down. I was just looking at the just doing some maths on because we've got the number of one cars issued, then we've got the number of individual sort of not users, but times people have gone, and the ratio between number of cars owned by people and the number of visits across the leisure facilities, people are going up. So there's more cars being bought, but people are going more regularly with their cars, so actually using their cars. So it's an average of 106 the last year, the last 25, 26, and it was 99, 24, 25, and it was 95, 23, 24. So that's a nice trajectory. So people are buying them, but they're using them more as well, investing in their own health. So that was quite a good news story, really. Any more questions on the report, members? Comments? No?
I could comment.
Yes, Councillor Crichton.
Just to say, yes, me and my family, we have got one card. Probably don't use them as much as we should, but yes, they are all signed up now, and the customer service has been very good. I'm not doing it as a trying to trick them or anything, or do it as a undercover, but you do always think that when you go in, on behalf of the public, just to see what the service is like, and everything's been very good. So I'd like that passed back to staff if that's possible. Thank you.
And Mr. Means, we still do the price for life on the. Do you want to explain that to members? I think this might be.
Yeah, we did a lot of research a number of years ago across the private sector and with a number of marketing companies looking at the structure of memberships. And what we found was, and what we've been recommended was that a lot of people sign up for memberships. Sometimes they don't have a long membership. Some people will be quite short. They might do 9 months. I think that's about the average. And then they often lapse and they come back at a later stage. So one of the ways of trying to keep people is trying to fix them on a price. So when they start, you fix them at that price, you fix it for life. It sounds like a foolish thing to do, but actually it's a very good thing to do, because they then don't cancel at 9 months and they just continue and continue and continue. So we see this fantastic low cancellation rate across the one cards, with people just staying there because they know they've got a guaranteed price. Because they know if they come out of the membership system, they have to come back in at a higher price. So it's just a commercial way of trying to retain members, and it's over the years we've had it in place for probably about 6 or 7 years, and it's really worked. And that was the benefit of some of the discussions we had with private sector membership companies, looking at how they operate their memberships, and it's worked well.
It's Brown.
Yeah, hi. Is there any initiatives or any other tools that we can use and bring out to the public in our wards and things to help drive the one card uptake?
Yeah, there is, and I think we're working on those. And I think it's one of the reasons that probably this area is more successful than some of our other facilities, is because we have actually invested in the marketing of the service. We have a marketing team that's specific around the leisure centres, and they are doing those kind of initiatives all the time. So the success of the one card at the minute is down to the product, but it's as much down to the fact that we've actually got a very, very core and very commercially minded marketing team that are marketing those facilities on a day-to-day basis. So we are doing that, Councillor Brown, and I think the investment that we've made has proven to be very successful.
Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed on the discount system that you've got with regards to that, you have a corporate discount system, you have a blue light discount system, but we also have roughly 15,000 veterans on the Isle of Wight that could benefit from a gym membership. It's something that's potentially could bring more people into that. Full disclosure, I'm obviously a veteran. I'm not asking for myself potentially, but it's with that large population of veterans, would it be something that we can consider putting a veteran discount into position 2?
Yeah, we do a number of discounts for organisations where there's a mass of people that can come forward to us. We do stuff for staff, we do stuff for the NHS, we do stuff for the police, we do stuff for the fire service. But yes, we could, if somebody wanted to make contact with us, actually look at that. It does become quite contentious because at the end of the day, it tends to be a particular group. It can't be the majority of people across the island, which is why we don't offer OAP prices anymore. We have a concessionary membership that focuses on people that need that additional support, and they're all means tested. But yes, if somebody wanted to come forward and have that conversation with us, that's perfectly acceptable.
They also offer various social prescribing free cards as well. So, or just discounted cards rather, if people get referred to by a doctor or someone, that could be for anything really. What we found is that although it's like a lost leader in a way, I think is it half price? I think is it half price the doctor, roughly like that.
Yeah.
What we found that people, about half of the people actually carry on after their initial period expires. So that's really good. Again, showing people that are investing in their house and they've found it beneficial. And we've even got a small scheme with our youth, our youth employment scheme in Newport, haven't we, Mr. Minns, where getting young people into work. In fact, you might be interested in having a pop down there as well. I'm sure we can arrange that or have a briefing on it. Getting young people back into work, but using a holistic support around looking at their housing needs as well. And one of the things that we've offered is getting them into the gym for that confidence as well, and to be with the young people. So we are taking a holistic view. So it's a really good, it's a council service, because sometimes you can't do this if it was externally run, So we are part of the Island One team. I'm just going to, there's no more questions. I've got one more question on different matter, and our page, the number 2, actually what your page numbers on it, but it's number 2 about the number of jobs supported by Regeneration projects, the UK Share Prosperity Fund. Mr. Mills, I couldn't quite remember the value of the last round we had of the small business grant. Was it about 180,000? You remember, or was it a bit more than that? I can't remember now.
I think the original grant was, first year was around about 500,000, and that was reduced to about 180.
Written 180 down actually, yeah. Because the rule of thumb with regarding jobs, regarding the ratio of jobs per the grant, they usually were used to about 5 years ago was about £10,000 per job. So we've had 22 out of the 180,000. So we've actually got quite good bang for our buck there, I think. So I just want to say well done to the team on that, who chose, and the businesses that have used that money really well with their projects. Right, no more questions on that. I will move on and we'll go to our verbal updates, and I'd like to welcome our visitors today. So the first one is going to be a Roadworks update. I don't know if you'd just like to, for benefit of people online and for the minutes, whether you could just introduce yourselves, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Stephen Ashman. I'm the Director of Island Roads.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Jimmy Wells. I'm the Network Manager from Island Roads. And I'm Eddie Fellows. I'm the Chief Executive for Island Roads.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Love, would you like to introduce this item? These are all going to be just the verbal updates we're on to now. So we'll have an opportunity to hear from our guests and from Mrs. Love, and then we can ask some questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. So at the agenda setting meeting, we received a request from Chair and Deputy Chair that they would like to firstly have an update, firstly to refresh or to introduce the new councillors to the way that network management is carried out. So last August at the committee meeting, we had a presentation about how the permit system works. And I think the committee at the time found that interesting and could have a greater understanding of how network management actually takes place. And then obviously I think we're all well aware that there has been a lot of scrutiny within the public and within the media about the management of roadworks on the island and the impact that that has on our communities. And today is an opportunity for you to see us all together. So the principal people that are responsible for the management and coordination of roadworks across the island from both the council and Island Roads, to say that, we have listened to what you have said. We have committed, since Simon has been here, we have appointed a new network manager. So he joined us at the beginning of last week, and I'm sure once he is, fully completed his training, etc., he will be available, obviously, to be that point of contact alongside our Island Roads colleagues. And yeah, we wanted to bring this to you today to provide some reassurance that we have listened and that we will continue to work together, to work collaboratively, to ensure that communication about particularly third-party roadworks, and obviously we'll go into that in more detail when the presentation is on, and the challenges that Island Roads and the council face with those utility companies that come onto the island and sort of carry out last minute and emergency works. But to give you the opportunity, obviously, to ask questions and to reassure you that the commitment that you wanted from all of us about literally moving in the right direction with Roadworks, we have listened to, we have heard, and we are making progress on that. So Jimmy has the presentation, so if you're happy to have a look at that, then we'll run through that and then obviously take some questions. So I'm going to share my screen, so it should appear, so you'll be able to see the slides on the big screen. Hopefully. Is that okay for everybody? Yeah. Sorry?
Do you want to go full screen?
Oh, I'm full screen on here. It's just catching up. So hopefully it will catch up because I'm full screen on my screen. I would just.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. As Michelle said, I thought we'd give you a Streetworks overview. So I did give this presentation last year, and I think it's important to recognise that the numbers move on, but generally they remain the same. But what I thought I'd give you an understanding of is some of the legislation that we work under, some of the restrictions that we work under, the powers that we hold on behalf of the authority delegated to do, and then really invoke some conversation in relation to some of the real challenges and how we overcome them, and some of the efforts that go into coordinating the network surrounded by water where we don't have anywhere else to send people. So if we move over to the first slide, it's not going to catch up. And we start with the Traffic Management Act of 2004. There we go. Which really was introduced to tackle congestion and disruption on the highway network. This was off the back of other legislation that we already had in place that we'll move on to. But really what this did is it gave the network management powers to the local traffic authority, in this case the Isle of Wight Council, and namely the traffic manager. Obviously it's slightly different here as some of the powers have been delegated to service provider as in Island Roads. But those posts do remain in the authority. As you've heard, the Isle of Wight Council have a traffic manager and a network manager that work alongside of us in managing this network. Just moving down. So you'll see then it's the New Roads and Streetworks Act of 1991. So this is the original legislation, if you like, as far as introduced noticing of works on the highway. So noticing used to be that utilities or any undertaker of works didn't actually really ask permission. They just kind of notified the authority that these works were taking place. But a lot of the codes of practices and powers that we still have come from this act, sorry. So what I thought would be helpful is if I walked you through, and I'm not going to talk you through all of them because as you see from the slides, you can refer back to them. There's a lot of sections of the New Roads and Streetworks Act. But really the ones that we use most of the time and kind of cover daily, if you like, is emergency works, section 52. These are the ones that cause most frustration, I believe, on the network. Requirement of undertaker to provide advance notice of works. This is section 54. And we'll go through what section 54 advance notification actually in reality looks like. Section 57 is the notice of emergency works. Section 60 is the general duties of undertakers to cooperate. But I'll go through some of the powers that we have in making them cooperate. I think most of you would agree that actually you probably don't have the powers that you think we should have, or would assume that we would have as a local highway authority or a permit scheme holder. Thanks, Michelle. There we go. So works under the permit scheme. So the Isle of Wight Council's permit scheme was introduced in April 2020 under the Traffic Management Act of 2004. So that's what gave the authority the right to implement that. So it enables the authority to grant, modify, or refuse applications from works promoters. The Traffic Management Act changes the section of the Roads and Streetworks Act used when operating a permit scheme under Section 54. But effectively what it did is it gave a provisional advanced authorization. So these are on major works only, where you'd have to come to the authority 3 months in advance to inform them of major works that were upcoming, to effectively help you coordinate these major schemes across the island. And then Section 52, as I said, is the emergency works. But looking at the next slide is permit scheme and guidance. What you'll see here is a list of conditions that and this is national, this isn't local to the island, is the conditions that a highway authority can impose on a permit submitted by a utility company or any undertaker of works. So there's 12 conditions in total. Some of these are statutory conditions that they have to or is assumed to go on, such as duration. So they request of 2 days, 3 days, 10 weeks, 6 months. And then the conditions are then something that we have to agree with the utility or undertaker in how they're going to undertake their works. So I think it's important to note here that the traffic management decision made to go on a roadworks application, for want of a better way of saying it, is the utility's request off of their own risk assessment. Now, by all means, we can challenge that risk assessment. And in lots of cases, there's been some that have been fairly well publicised recently. There has been some where we said, actually, you do need the traffic management that you're requesting. But this is something that they input as part of their planning application. There's things in there like management of traffic signals. Do we want somebody stood on site manually controlling signals? Display of a permit number, employment of the proper method of working. The one that causes a lot of frustration, as well as, we step away from road closures for a second. I know that one kind of upsets most people, but as far as multi-way signals, two-way signals on strategic routes where we ask for somebody to be stood on site, effectively manually controlling, because you'll appreciate on the island, we've recently just completed a job out on Hale Common. It's very tidal there, depending on the time of day that you're there. So you need somebody stood there. We'll impose that condition on ourselves and on others. But the fixed penalty notice that we issue is £160. It's £240 initially, but then if it's paid within 28 days, it goes down to 160. But that fixed penalty notice is you issue once. So, you can make assumptions on why you don't see compliance on a manual control of signals when normally it's a third party subcontractor or it's an agency worker that you would typically use to do that kind of role, would far and exceed the penalty for not complying. Same as the conditioning as far as communication is concerned. The conditioning for that is advance letter drops to affected frontages. So that's the people that literally live on the street where it's happening, and advance warning signs. There isn't anything in there in relation to meetings with councillors, to press releases, to far in excess of those immediate letter drops. And I'm not saying those things don't happen, because they do, and there's some good engagement with the utilities, but it's not something that we have the authority to make them do. Moving over into permit applications and how those work, you'll see that they're broken down into several different categories of major, standard, minor, and immediate. So effectively what you're looking at here, so major application, as I said earlier, you get a provisional advance authorization. It's 12 weeks in advance. At 12 weeks in advance, we then have 10 days to grant or refuse that permit, depending on if we have just reason to refuse that or if we grant it with conditions. Standard don't need the PAA, but they do have 10 days to let us know. So that's for jobs that are, so standard application is 5 days up to 10 days. A minor application is 0 to 5, 0 to 3. And they have 3 days to do that in. But immediate, you will note it says on there, is 2 hours after the start of works. So it creates a challenge when publicly we will get a phone call to say the signal's on such a road, there's a road closure on such a road, and the public will know before us in a lot of cases. So we'll say, we're not sure of that. And then what we'll do is we'll get a district steward to go out and have a look and find out what's going on. If we know the utility, we can ring them, we can search our applications to see if anything's come in. But in a lot of cases, those works have already commenced and there's already a hole open in the road before you even get the chance to review the application. So in things like, I know, so the one I'm talking about the other day, there was an emergency road closure that was then publicly challenged in relation to, does it need a road closure? In reality, we agree that it didn't. But that traffic management was already in place by the time that we became aware. And then our job then is to then scramble in the background to convince that utility company to step down that traffic management pending on their risk assessment. Moving on to the permit refusal reasons on the next slide, as you'll see, they're limited. So our job is to control the network and to keep traffic moving, and the traffic manager has a responsibility under the Traffic Management Act to ensure the free movement of traffic. However, our job is not to say that those works cannot happen, because it's important to also remember that works have to happen in order to maintain supply. We'll all agree on that. You know, as inconvenient as roadworks are, people need gas, water, electric, broadband. But it's controlling how and when that happens. And these are the reasons why we can do so. Missing information in the application, incorrect permitting details, coordination issues, so if they're conflicting with themselves or somebody else, lack of approval or other. So that could be, you know, events, that kind of thing. Moving on, please, Michelle. I appreciate the detail here small, but hopefully you'll be able to get the opportunity to review this. These are the permitting numbers of received between 2025 and 2026. This is financial year from April 25 to March of 26. So what you'll see in there is in the total numbers of permitting applications that came through. So on the Isle of Wight, there was 12,058 applications to work on the highway. And they're broken down, and roughly that really stays relatively flat. We will see around about 1,000 a month coming through. But what's most alarming, probably, and this is what we have to put out there, is actually a lot of those are coming down as emergency permits, far in excess of where you would probably expect to see them against national averages. So immediate permits, for instance, in this case, were over 3,000. Over 25%. Moving on to the next slide, there's a breakdown there, and you'll see the orange, it's probably easier to explain it. So the orange are planned and the blue are emergencies. Again, it's a bit more of a detailed breakdown because I thought that you'd probably be interested in actually looking at what those immediate numbers did look like. So this is broken down by utility, and actually we're also included in that under the Isle of Wight section as we're doing works on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council. You will note from this that actually if you look at those numbers against planned versus immediate, so the national average, I think, is probably important to put out there. It's around about 30% of work should be emergency or is recognised as emergency, 70% is planned. On the Isle of Wight, it's actually back to front. Southern Water, you will see from there, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 was over 70% each month, each quarter. You've then got Southern Gas Networks, 32, 36, 37 and 50. Similar story for SSEN. It's challenging when you have a program of planned works, and then that's the level of, and as I said earlier, the level of emergencies that are then overlaid on top of that planning. So all the best planning in the world, you have to constantly be aware that these emergencies can pop up as the numbers speak for themselves. You'll then also see on the next slide where we have the permitting application responses. So how many we've granted and how many we've refused. And then the third line on there, superseded, is the permits that one's taken over from the next. So you see, we do refuse a lot of permits on the island too. This really goes to show how many we actually do say no to. But inevitably, we can say no to however many. Those works will come back. That permit will be resubmitted. Just means that they're complying with whatever we've asked them to comply with. Or inevitably, some of these do return as emergencies. Because if a planned works is in relation to a drop in supply, it's not unknown for it to come back to us as a loss of supply. There has been some changes in relation to the legislation that we work under, and those are there. But effectively, what we used to have set numbers for inspection numbers. Actually, they're now performance based. I mean, it works a lot better. So the better they perform so this is site safety. This isn't permitting or coordination. So the better they perform, the less inspections we do. The worse they perform, the higher we do. So it does work, and it's a good way of working. Also from April 2023, which is important to remember, permit notifications were then required within 2 hours of work starting or stopping 7 days a week. It only used to be a Monday to Friday requirement prior to 2023. So that at least then reflects on, so most of you are familiar with one.network, I'm assuming, where you can go on, you can see what roadworks are happening in your area. It would then be a true reflection of that, because it will automatically pull that update through once they've started or stopped the works. And then effectively later on this year, that also becomes a requirement for the highway authority, not just utilities. Off the back of the new Roads and Streetworks Act of 1991 is a number of codes of practices. So these are the code of practice for inspections. So effectively, how does all highway authorities go out and inspect the utility companies or inspect our own works to ensure compliance? So those are the numbers that I was talking about earlier, those set numbers for inspections, but also what it is that we're looking for and what we can do when we do inspect, and the controls and measures that we have in place. Code of practice for reinstatement, like it says on the tin, is actually what is the quality of the reinstatement that's going down on the road? Does it hit the criteria it needs to? But I think what's also important to point out to you, councillors, is that a guarantee reinstatement for a utility company is only 2 years. If it's a deep excavation, it goes up to 3. So effectively what happens is somebody goes in, does a patch on the top of a water leak, electricity connection, whatever it may be. 2 years later, that trench fails. That then returns to the local highway authority to go in and rectify. You no longer have a recourse to go back to the utility and ask them to come back. So as you can imagine, when you've got, I think we pulled some numbers and looking at the permitting numbers. Effectively, I think Southern Water alone on the Isle of Wight are digging around about 10 holes a day. It's quite a high number to keep on top of, and so we're here for 25 years as Island Roads. It's a lot of responsibility that then comes back our way, but then inevitably it will always sit with the authority, regardless of who was maintaining the highway asset. So it's really important that we work with these utility companies and check their quality of works. But there is a need to manage works on the public highway, and I think it's clear to say, and it's evident, that keeping road users and members of the public safe always has to be the #1 priority. That's effectively our main aim. So yes, we have to protect the public investment. Yes, we have to protect the highway network as an asset, but we also have to protect the public. We also have to protect the necessary features, so accessibility, vulnerable users, and enable other things to happen, like events and license or activities to be carried out when they're wanted. But you're almost guaranteed that in order to keep public safe, that we all have different thresholds of what we believe to be safe. That causes some conflict. It causes some conflict internally. It causes some conflict between us and the utility companies. It causes conflict between us and members of the public. We will say we believe that this needs 2-way traffic signals. This needs a road closure because of this legislation. So a number to throw out there for you: if a road is a bus route, you have to maintain between 3.25 meters and 3.5 meters running lane. for those of you that know the island, know that we don't have many roads that are 7 metres wide or more. So therefore, effectively, any roadworks that you have that goes towards the centre line of a carriageway, you could risk assess that would require a road closure. It's a challenge, and it's something we have to work with that look at minimising sites down. The additional challenge on the island, and I think we all appreciate this, is we're a tourist island. And there is a strategic aim to try and protect that tourist season as much as possible. So effectively what you have is you have 3 layers of traffic sensitivity across the island's highway network. So you have all day, all year. So this will be the likes of the Jewel. The Medina will be all day, all year, 365 days a year will be traffic sensitive. You'll have peak times at AM, PM all year. So those are your peak flows, so your commuter roads, if you like. And then you have your summer increased traffic, which is the 1st of June to the 30th of September, which, as you will appreciate, is most of the roads on the Isle of Wight suddenly have an extra level of sensitivity that wouldn't usually outside of that key season. In addition to this, there is also a wish to try and protect school holidays. So some of those will overlap with these periods, but there's 13 weeks a year that schools break up for. And then also you have a Christmas embargo period, which usually runs in any kind of area with the tourist economy attracting to shops and the like. Events will be run from beginning of December right the way into the start of January. So in a nutshell, what you have is you have between October and May, taking out Christmas and taking out getting rained off to get any major works done. So this is the reason why you will see an increase in larger schemes taking place over that winter period. And you will also see a lot of island roads works being undertaken over that period. The challenge that you have with that is there is a lot of downtime because of the weather. There's certain conditions that you cannot lay material in. There's certain conditions that you cannot do certain utility activities under. So effectively what you have is you're trying to condense a program consistently into those months. And I've had a lot of conversations with different councillors in relation to that. And really it's a decision that probably does need to be made by the authority as far as how far does that tourist season go? And I've sat and I've met with business owners and had that conversation. You'll meet with a shopkeeper that says, no, you should do all of your works in this month. You meet with a hotelier that says, no, you should do it all in this month. And there's no kind of happy medium. So that is one of the challenges that we do have and something for consideration. But then also don't forget, on top of your planned works during those winter months, as I said, for the reasons I said, you'll have an increase in flooding, trees falling. So naturally, but I thought what would be a really good idea is to actually give you an example of a recent roadworks that happened, and most of you are familiar with this one. This was the Fairley Road closure. These were third-party works that were applied for to Island Roads in January of this year, asking for works to start in February. The works had to be completed for May as they were in relation to the Isle of Wight Festival. This wasn't a simple case of us just being able to say no, because if I said no and my team had said no and the Isle of Wight Council's team had said no, these works wouldn't have been scheduled in until October at least. But they had to be done in relation to the Isle of Wight Festival that you all know starts in June. Couldn't allow them in January and February because I already had works that were being undertaken on Eleanor's Grove. So effectively, you're left with very little choice but to enable those works to happen. So the choice that you then do have is, can you then put anything else on top to stop future conflict from happening in the past? And I'm pleased to say that between the parties, we've managed to get extra jobs then put in that would have caused conflict later on down the line. But that didn't come without criticism, without scrutiny, to say that these works should never have been allowed to happen. But my challenge back to anybody that says that is, should I have said no until October? Would the impact been better in October? Would the development site that actually managed to piggyback off the back of that road closure been able to wait till October as well for the football club? Would the Isle of Wight Council's team be able to not remove the trees that they did in that period? And would they have waited until October? Would they wait until November? Effectively, the question was not that these works don't need to happen, but when do you want me to shift them to? I'm not saying this because this one, was heavily publicised. I just think it's a very real example of actually some of the common challenges that we face. Same as the next slide of Binstead Road was closed for Island Roads Works in conjunction with Southern Gas Networks. And we worked under a collaborative site arrangement. Southern Water had a one-way system between February and March, with Horsebridge Hill and Newport also one way for waterworks. The 2-day closure was then needed in Binstead before work started on Bridlesford Road. Brading Down Road was then closed at the same time due to a road traffic collision. Southern Water also had a road closure on Newport Road Apps Heath for mains replacement. All again happening outside of this tourist season. So individually, these works were planned. However, combined together, depending on the route that drivers wish to take, and we all live on the island, you may come against multiple roadwork sites in the same time. So really, this isn't a question of, again, was it poorly coordinated? That's for you to decide. But actually, what I think is really important that we get out there, and to you as councillors and to members of the public, is actually this is the reason why these things happen. So if you look at individual diversion routes, they don't overlap. If you look at demand, it never goes away. And for the next 12 months, please have a look at Island Road's website, have a look at One.Network. The conversation that my team are now having is looking at major schemes that are taking place this year, next year, and into 2028. So those are planned schemes that will be going in, and will be in that we will work with utilities on coordination and communication for. But the emergencies are not dropping. So our job is to try and work with everybody to understand actually how we manage the highway, the shared challenges that we have, the really positive conversations that we are having with the utility companies in relation to what that communication looks like and coordination. I was pleased to see that Southern Water have this week, there's a scheme that's coming up in Newchurch. They've reached out to local councillors, to parish councillors, to Island Roads to actually look at that demand. What does that communication look like? So I think if we can achieve it on planned works, as Island Roads do as well, you'd have seen our advance warnings, our press releases and letter drops, is actually where the most frustration is caused is by this emergency element. So actually, how do we better communicate that? We've made some advancements on Island Roads website. So you can go on and you can have a look and type your road name in and you can see who's doing what and when. But actually, it's going to be a collective. What shared platforms do we have? What improvements can be made in order to communicate that further? That's the end of my presentation. So I'll leave you to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. We're going to have a case discussion now. There's a lot to take in, and we'll ask some questions. But I do want to bring in at some point our Director of Communities, Mr. Moon, to reflections of since he's been in post and changes that we've been bringing through since April. I know we heard on last week that it starts now, but actually the work's been going on for some time now. So, let's have committee have some questions, reflections. So let's write this down. I saw Councillor Whelan first, and then Councillor Rafferty, and then Councillor Stewart, and then Councillor Lowe. Right, do you want to go for it, and I'll carry on my list.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank you for the work you've done at Hale Common. That was incredible work. It was incredibly professional, and I hope Samantha passed my thanks on to you guys. And I know the Fighting Cocks looked after your guys up there as well. And that was proof that when things are done well, people can understand that things need to be done on the roads, the work needs to be done on the roads. I just want to ask a quick question with regards to a process when a utility company actually goes onto the road. It's purely a health and safety reason. Anecdotally, I've had to ask for access onto the permit for access onto the highways before. It takes 3 months for that process to happen. It also costs quite a considerable amount of money for it to happen. I need to have my risk assessments in place. The traffic management system needs to be put in and professionally drawn. There's no way that I could turn up on site without having that risk assessment in place How are the utility companies getting away with not having the risk assessment in place? Because you, as the person that's looking after the roads, and also the Highways Authority, need to have that risk assessment to make sure that they're doing the work correctly and by law effectively. So how is that happening?
So the difference between you asking for a license, so if you are coming to us to ask for a license, it falls under different legislation to have that license. So what we're talking about here by utilities are statutory undertakers. So they have code powers from the Department of Transport to work. They don't provide us, there's no requirement for them to provide us with their risk assessment. They elect their own traffic management and inform us what they're going to put in without the reason for that. We, as a highway authority, or delegated powers of the highway authority, can ask them why they want to use that or challenge it and say we think it's not a requirement, but they don't go through the same level of scrutiny. It's the same as if you came to me and said that you wanted a license to work on the highway. I would also ask for your, I'd ask for your insurance. I'd ask for your accreditation cards. Utility companies don't have to do that. They do have to provide me with their accreditations if we undertake an inspection of that site, but that's not at application. Application needs to be, we want to work between X point, Y point. This is for how long, this is what we're undertaking, this is the traffic management.
Thank you very much for that. It's just so as an understanding of where we all sit with regards to the highway side. And the other side you mentioned about the permitting or the fixed penalty notices. Is that something that's set up by the Highways Authority, us, or is that set in law by national government?
DFT, Department for Transport. They're not locally set. Don't have the ability to locally set fixed penalty notices, I'm afraid. They'd be a lot higher than they are.
Thank you. Councillor Rafferty.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was very good. One of the things that jumped up to me right at the start is like, what's went wrong? Looking from the general public's point of view, it looks like there's absolute chaos on the island's roads. And what I would like to say is this as good as it gets? Is it going to get any better? Are we going to be expecting this for the next 5 years? What do they think that we need to do to improve it?
Yeah, Mr. Moon. Yep.
Yeah, I'm I'll just pick up on the point when you introduced that I might comment. I've been in post 3 months now, and I'm very clear that roadworks, what's going on the island, is a major issue for residents, businesses, and all members of this council. So it has to improve. We have a responsibility as the Highway Authority with our partners who we ask to deliver these services through island roads, to hold utility company to first of all deliver our own works in line with the best practice that we can possibly adopt, but also hold utility companies to account for what they do. So I think some of my reflections of what I've seen in the first 3 months is we're not doing that consistently and strongly enough with some of these utility operators. In the presentation, you will have heard reference, and it's absolutely right, because the issues of roadworks are a problem for every local authority. It's not just the Isle of Wight, every local authority across the country. But across the water, Southern Gas Networks and Southern Water will ensure, even on B-class roads, not A-class roads, on B-class roads, that they man 24/7 traffic management. I watch it almost on a daily basis. They use subcontractors. The key is that we have to keep on at them. If we're not constantly focused, we're not pressurising, we're not out on site. So I think, as in the introduction, Michelle said that we took steps to bring in an officer, so we can have a little bit more resource, work with the teams in Island Roads and Streetworks teams there, who, there is a lot of talent and capability in that team, but we need to work much more tightly, recognising that we are the Highway Authority. We do have powers under the Traffic Management Act, and we just don't. So any utility company will come up to you and say, it's an emergency, it's easy. They can get onto the network quite quickly. I suggest that most of those works, and I think the stats that have just been shown, a lot of them, you know, are probably, there'll be urgent works, they'll be planned, but they're not emergencies. And we need to call that out. And I don't think we're calling it out, is my honest position here. I think not only coming into post, I've recognised that actually the benefit of, you know, having worked in other authorities, you know, I've seen this, and yeah, we do have to apply a lot of pressure, a lot of resources, and to tackling that, it's going to take some tough conversations. Yeah, but if we're not having them, we'll just get the same. Going back to your point, you'll just get the same of what you're experiencing at the moment, and I don't think that's acceptable. So what we do need to go out is we do need to pressurise this. We need to work consistently with our partners on the mainland. Yeah, Southern Gas Networks, it's the same utility company that's operating in Hampshire, Southampton and Portsmouth. Yeah, why is it acceptable to have a different approach there than it is here? Now, I want the best practice, and I want the same approach and consistency that other authorities, our neighbours, have. And I think just giving some positive, you know, some of you will have seen recently, it was in the press, Southampton City Council got their lane rental scheme approved. Hampshire have done something similar, Portsmouth doing something similar. We, you know, going forward, we will be working under a combined authority. The powers around lane rental will be something that is devolved to the combined authority. I think more recently we heard through dialogue with the Department of Transport, they will accept, you know, schemes coming forward, and actually they will give us the opportunity of putting a scheme forward and approve it before the mayor takes up post in 28. So I'm keen for us as an authority not to reinvent the wheel, but to work with our partners in the Hampshire and the combined authority region to develop a scheme that works for us on the island. And I think we have to take a really strong focus about protecting our key route network. So our principal routes that link the major centres on the island and the ferry terminals and the key transport links. And we have to take it, you know, we have to try and adopt a scheme. Clearly, it has to come before you. You have to approve that scheme. We have to put that forward. But that's what professionally, as officers, I will be trying to bring forward to help you tackle some of these issues going forward. And I'll give you a good example of what wouldn't be happening right at this point in time. For those of you that have used the route between Ryde and Newport, I think it's Southern Gas Networks have got some temporary lights on Kite Hill. That have been in and out within a few hours, because the principles of lane rental is it will focus the mind. So the point, quite rightly, there is national legislation around fixed penalty notices, but if you apply a lane rental scheme, the costs of that lane rental scheme, yeah, will be a lot more than the fixed penalties, and it will focus the mind of anyone who wants to take possession of the network. You will plan your works, you will go in there and you will work efficiently. So I think taking steps like that, we've got to do, to go back to Councillor Rafferty's question, will help improve things. One of the other observations, and I'm sure if we went around the table, I'm sure people would comment about consultation and engagement with communities. We clearly have got to get better at that. I think that is something that, yeah, listening to businesses, listening to residents, we haven't done enough of that, and we need to be much more proactive. That includes our own works, but it also means that we need to encourage our utility companies to take a similar approach. Yeah, we've got to recognise that, yeah, there is safety, there is, yeah, the need to get the gas pipe fixed or the water leak fixed, but there's also an economy on the island. It's a visitor economy. There are residents getting to and from work. That isn't something, and I think many of you around this room, you know, I've experienced some of those delays and the impact it has with people being late for work or missing medical appointments. Yeah, that is something that I think we've got a responsibility as an authority, you know, using the powers under that. You know, it's not easy because those powers don't work for us as easily as they could. But we've got to be really pushing that the envelope as far as we can to do that. So I think they're some of my observations coming in, and I've just that reassurance that I do want to see an improvement. And I think there's a collectively, from an officer perspective, we also want to see that. You know, It's tough. It's a challenging network. It's not easy. There are lots of competing demands, as you've been rightly pointed out in the presentation. And yeah, we've got to find ways of doing that in a better way than we are at the moment.
I think you've asked the question we're all wanting to know, so that was really helpful, Councillor. Thank you for that response. I've got Councillor Stewart on my list next.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate what's been said already, and I have spoken repeatedly with Island Roads and Highways, and I'm very grateful for all of the efforts they've made. If we go back to Horsebridge Hill, the first closure of Horsebridge Hill and the diversion through my ward, we had a committee set up, chaired by Michelle, which was extremely useful in ironing out all of the issues that came up. And I know that Island Roads made a lot of effort very, very quickly to try and sort out things like traffic speeds and the like. However, obviously that was a one-off, and we had that same problem again when Southern Water closed Horsebridge Hill. Southern Water were less willing to be helpful, but they were encouraged and eventually did appear, and we managed to get the same sort of committee with the same sort of engagement, which meant that the additional issues which came about were also dealt with. So there are clear ways in which we have seen some improvement. I'm very grateful for all of those. We've also seen more recently, actually, I put a question in to the last meeting in March, and it was I asked that the council would consider early council engagement and use of multi-agency project groups. And the council response was extremely positive. In fact, it was so positive I didn't insist on the question and answer being read out. And obviously, I think that was a starting point. And some of the comments which Mr. Moon has made, are very encouraging. I'm very grateful for all of those. And that sort of really brings me up to the next point, which is if emergency closures, and we have seen Southern Water doing a lot of that. When Southern Water came in front of us, that was one of the questions I put to them, and they agreed that they would help coordinate at a senior level. The CEO who came down with his team, they agreed that they would coordinate with other utilities to try and raise their game on the island, and they accepted that it was unacceptable what they were doing. And obviously we'd like to see more of that. And obviously you mentioned lane closures and lane rentals, sorry. This specifically the most recent one at Southampton, which is a very useful example. So the first question really is, are there other ways in which mainland authorities have managed to control what the utilities do? Obviously it'd be unfair to expect an immediate full response on that, but any sort of thoughts that you could send through to us on the committee would be helpful. And not finally, but nearly finally. We mentioned the tourist season, and we mentioned the figures around, when we have to be closed and the various other events and the problems that we face on the island of basically seasonal traffic and the like. I'm just wondering where the evidence base is for that. How old is it? Can we see those figures in some ways? Because this is something which has been bandied around ever since I joined, which is some 3.5 years ago, but I've never actually seen the real figures and evidence to support, say, traffic numbers, vehicle movements, visitor numbers that would actually be certain that we could say it is this particular time. 1st of June is a date. Why the 1st of June? Why not the 1st of July? Or why not, say, the end of July when the schools break up? It would be interesting to know how we get to that information, and perhaps open up some windows that might allow roadworks to be carried out at better times of the year and therefore maybe faster. And finally, and this is something which I have been muttering about for many years, long before I even thought of getting anywhere near the council, which is I repeatedly see roads closed where there is either no work going on or partial work where the road could be partially opened, And I hear a number of what seem to be quite valid reasons why that doesn't happen. But you see some egregious examples. For instance, a local road to me, there was what's clearly an emergency work for electricity supply just off the highway. It's a minor road. The road was closed. They went away in the evening. They put up barriers. The locals could get round, but the signs saying road closed were still there. Now that is common. Not all the time, not everywhere, but common to see. And that type of thing really irks residents, and they are the people who pester us about that. That was it. And I apologise for sort of taking up an amount of time. And I have to go back to the fact that I am really grateful for all of the time and effort that Island Roads and Highways have spent talking to myself and others about these issues and how we can solve some of them slowly but surely.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I don't know if you want to respond to it. It's quite a lot there, but I think respond there.
I think on the,
I've got a few other people waiting, so.
I can go briefly on the
David,
availability
14.
matrix. I think we need to be open to that and have those conversations because we need to maximise every opportunity we can to get to deliver these works. And I think maybe, obviously, something I would like to review with Island Roads, see if we can make, give ourselves more opportunities to deliver works in a more effective way rather than sort of tying us. But that has to be done in consultation, with colleagues, and various sectors around this room. I think the other point, Councillor Stewart, is that we do need to, go back to your point about roads being closed and no activity. That is an issue. We've got to police the network a lot better, particularly where we see no action. We need to be following that up, pushing on that to make sure that we, it undermines the whole process. And I think it doesn't help us at all in instilling confidence around how we're managing the network.
Thank you. I'm just going to go get through my list, and then we might want to have some more questions or some more comments from people in the room. Councillor Loke.
Thank you, Chair. Keep it sweet. There's two occasions in my ward over the past few months and weeks that caused huge amounts of anxiety and loss of business to local companies in Ryde. Firstly, there was the closure of Ellen's Grove and Binstead Roads at the same time, and then the immediate emergency closure of West Street, effectively cutting us off from the rest of the island. A lot of my residents, friends, colleagues, small businesses in the town, I'm not just exaggerating, they really thought about giving up. They just thought about, this is it. It's no point just doing this anymore. No one's listening to us. I know Councillor Stewart mentioned what happened at Horsebridge Hill and how successful that was to me privately earlier. That's exactly the sort of thing that we need. So I can go to the business and say, no, we're working on this as a plan. That particular occasion, we failed our residents and failed small businesses at a time where they really are struggling. And the other instance was a few weeks ago on Queen's Road, which Island Roads were absolutely fantastic about. Councillor Kirby helped me with too. Effectively, the contractors, Southern Water, came into the road, closed it in both directions, cutting off the main arterial route into Ryde with hour-and-a-half tailbacks through to Wootton. I didn't realise what happened until Councillor Kirby spoke to me and said that he was on site trying to sort it out. I lived on that location. I couldn't even get into home that night. I couldn't even get into my drive. And it was obvious straight away. And thank you so much, Jimmy and your team, for coming out and highlighting the fact that they didn't need to close the road completely. The works weren't completed correctly. And we were just left high and dry. In fact, I physically had to stand there with a phone and get the equipment taken away out of Queen's Road, the temporary lights, just to open it up so people could come down. I opened it up. It was quite nice, actually. It was quiet for a while, the first time. Quite enjoyed it. I opened it up and the traffic just flowed through. So, they just want to highlight those two issues on behalf of my residents and see what we can do to make sure that never happens again. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to respond to anyone there, Councillor Loke?
No, I just wanted to highlight those two issues and say thank you for the work, but just make sure that's noted as two really major issues that happen.
Thank you for raising that. Thank you. I've got Councillor Brown next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, very informational. I agree with a lot of what Mr. Moon said. I think for most of us who live on the island and have constituents to look after, it's the top three things on every constituent's talking plan. So a couple of things. I apologise if we go over any old ground. But from the statistics we're looking at, there's footway deterioration is a downward trend. Everything seems to be down year on year. Wherever you look, it seems to be going down, apart from the emergency response within 2 hours, which, I've never seen a graph like that in my working industry, where everything looks like it's 100%. And category 1 large potholes, we all know, we could probably all name a pothole now that seems large enough to us, and it doesn't reflect that. Just a couple of things. Is there a plan in place for better communication between all the utilities to maybe streamline what they're doing and when they're doing it? Is there a plan in place that will flip the emergency work? It's a 70-30 split, which is on the mainland. Mr. Moon said a lot of practices on the mainland. Can we get some best practice sharing over to the island? Because, that's a massive flip, 70-30, whichever way you look at it. And basically through all the stats on here, the roads have been on roads and footways on a downward trend since 2020 or 2021. And is there a plan to now make that an upward trend, so we can all have some good news? Now we've heard in the chamber, when it works really well, as Councillor Whelan has stated, and Councillor, it's great. Everybody knows it. You can see it, you can feel it. It's marvellous. But we also know a lot of cases where it hasn't gone so well. The communication hasn't been handled very well. The public communication hasn't been handled very well. And it just seems like it's chaos and disorganized. So I may not know all the facts of everything, but just, a bit more communication to everybody, a bit more inter-communication. And yes, the lane rental thing, it may have to go to that and should help mass. So that's all I've got at the moment. Thanks.
You, Councillor Brown. Do you want to respond to that? Sure.
I think that there's a few points. I think you were making reference to the performance report and some of the issues around the stats in there, but I think the point I would make is that we're already taking action to engage more consistently locally with the utility companies on the island. But your point around sharing best practice is equally as important, and I need to ensure that the council has a representation in the regional port, because these utility companies are operating, because it's absolutely key for me to make sure that we're getting best practice and we don't get a second-rate service here on the island because it's easy. And yeah, I am already opening up conversations with my counterparts in the neighbouring authorities. I think it's healthy for us to work as close as we can with them, learn from them. As I said earlier on, I don't want to reinvent the wheel with a lane rental scheme. It makes sense to have one that's consistent across the combined authority area. But equally, can I benefit from any of the experience they've had? Because every local authority across the country faces these challenges, and we have to just call them out consistently, because if we don't, it becomes quite easy for them just to keep pushing the other way. And then hopefully we'll see the tide turn and some of those stats change, go in the other direction.
Thank you. I've got Councillor William wants to come back in, and then Councillor Kirby. Is any more of the committee before I bring in? Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, I'm going to go to the committee first before I go to non-members of the committee. So, so Councillor William, Councillor Kirby, Councillor Cameron, and then I'll go to Councillor Garrett. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. Simon, have we got anything in writing at the moment with regards to the lane rental situation? And if you wouldn't mind, if I could ask a supplementary afterwards as well, Chair. All right, to ask a supplementary afterwards as well, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll be keeping my eye on the time. We've got a few other things to get through, but yes.
But at the moment, it's a national scheme, so local authorities or areas, transport authority areas or highway authority areas can apply to the scheme. There's a number of them that are already running. There is sort of a guidance framework. We can't apply it to every single part of our road network. It will essentially be what I would define as our key route network, our key corridors. From an office perspective, I'm committed to developing that plan with a sort of the basis of bringing that back to the committee for a decision, but hopefully there's an opportunity to use engagement sessions in between to work with members to shape what that scheme looked like, where we can have influence over what it looks like. But there is a national framework that we have to follow. It's not something that, it's not something we can do. It's essentially we've got to put an application into the Department for Transport.
Supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. So if that is something that we can do, and we put the application in to the Department of Transport for both the chair and for you, Simon, is it something we potentially could put onto the agenda for our next 30 meeting to ensure to see how far we're getting along with it?
I'm happy.
I think it'll come as soon as it can.
I'm happy to keep you appraised through our engagement sessions that run parallel to the committee process. It will really depend on sort of resource allocation and freeing that up. But I need to I'm clear that Roadworks is a key priority for everyone, and therefore I'm just going to put that to the top of the pile, because I think we do need to push on with it as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Simon. Cheers. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. That's a good question. So I've got Councillor Kirby now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can we have an assurance that both island roads and highways, because I think what I'm seeing is not so much the plan work, which is all going well because there's consultations, etc., and they do go well. Everybody knows then that road's closed and they make adjustments to do it. But we are the failure I see is the emergency road closures that just pop up overnight. Queen's Road, Simon Walker has said, you can't get a bus through it. It's a 9-metre road with a 3-metre pavement. There was no reason for that to be closed. I woke up this morning to a leak at the top of where there was a leak at the top of Upton Road. That's been going for 2 weeks. That's a repair that was done a month ago. Now, when I complained the last time, because Southern Water didn't put any no waiting cones up, which if they had, they could have kept the road open. Now, come up this last week, because it's only a leaking pipe what they didn't repair properly the last time. Last week, they put no waiting cones up there, and the actual people of the houses kept the road clear for them to do the work. They never turned up. So what they do, took the cones away, people parked there, they turned up last night, everybody's parked there, it's closed the road, it's now closed for probably 3 days. Now, if that's, how can that be just jobs like that? How can they be justified under the 2-hour emergencies when they've been running for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they come in last night under the Emergency Road Closure Act and closes the road for 3 days? We've only got to look at, as you found yourself, Eleanor's Grove with the traffic lights. People were using Upton Road. I was there at 6:30 this morning watching as the cars were all screaming down to go Upton Road to miss the traffic lights at Eleanor's Grove, only to find, because the road closure signs weren't properly signed out, and they've had to turn down and then go down one little local road to try and get to the Downs Road. So I think if we concentrate on the emergency road closures and actually prove they're not done, I think that would take a lot of the hassle away. The planned ones, yes, I'd like to see the embargo dates changed so we can work on the roads for bigger projects a lot longer through the year. But it's the emergency road closures that I think which is causing every one of us here and everyone on the island the problems. Thank you.
I would concur with what you're saying, and we do need to focus on those. I'll just give you the example of Queen's Road recently. 10 weeks prior to a couple of weeks ago, they did a repair. I think it was a few hundred meters. It was nearer to the school and the church. No different location. It was absolutely acceptable to do that under 2-way lights. So why, essentially a couple of months later, it has to be a full closure? We have to make sure that we're challenging this more robustly, be more consistent. Because that I saw that on this occasion, Councillor Kirby, you beat me to it. Because as soon as I saw it, I came straight away. What on earth are we doing with a closure in that location? It was causing chaos around Ryde. I'm totally recognise what Councillor Loke has said. The consequences of what is happening is significant. It is having an impact on communities, local economies, residents' daily lives, and they are going about those activities without giving any thought to that process. We have got to get in there, and it will be the only uncomfortable conversations. But that's what we've got to have, and we've got to apply resource at it. We've got to prioritise that, and those emergency closures, when they come up, we've got to go out there, we've got to challenge it. I don't want to stop people having water or gas supplies. Those have to be repaired, but we need to make sure that how they're executing those repairs are done in a way in which it has minimal impact or on other major aspects of people's daily lives. I'm totally with you.
Thank you. Thank Councillor. I've got Councillor Cameron, Councillor Critch, and then I'll go to non-committee members. I've got Councillor Garrett.
Hi there. I believe you're updating your website. I believe the communication is crucial to our residents, and to actually, if they can see who's causing these problems, that will be really helpful. So in my area, say you have a pipe that Southern Water has replaced because it's completely rotten, and then they come back and they only replace a metre of it, and then they come back several months later and they replace another metre of it, and then they come back and replace another metre, rather than doing the whole job. So is there any way that we can actually get them to do a proper job in the first place?
Mr. Ashman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Yes, so we recognise all these challenges you're raising. Unfortunately, we're not in charge of how Southern Water operate. We can only try and influence them. But I'm really pleased that we're having this dialogue now. It's a drum that I've been banging for quite some time. But we need to get on top of this because it is a deteriorating situation. We are faced with a lot of challenge, a lot of work that needs to be done by the utility companies. We know that Southern Gas Networks are committed to a 30 kilometres of mains upgrade across this island. Southern Water have just recently, in the last month or so, told us there's another 4 kilometres they're planning to do. So what we're suffering from is probably ageing infrastructure. And the challenge they have with the repairs is often they chase them down the road. I think in your area, Cops Lane is a good example of that. I've lost count of how many times that has been closed once they chased the leaks down the road, which then ultimately ended up in them placing the whole length of pipe through there. So it is an ongoing challenge. We're in the same place as all you guys. We're very frustrated about it. So yeah, we welcome the support in getting this right. We have felt like a bit of a lone voice on this for a little while. And it's good to have your support and challenge these things. And we'll do everything we can to support the councillors to get the works that happen on the network better communicated. We've achieved very high standards for ourselves because that is established within our contract in terms of our communications. When we do major schemes, we go through all the stakeholder comms to explain the works we're going to do. But the reality at the moment that we're doing around about 25% of the works out there, 75% of it is being delivered by utilities. And as you've experienced with the conversations today, there's a significant amount of that we're not actually hearing about until after it's started on the ground. And we have a number of situations where, those powers are used to get a start, and it almost becomes a fait accompli that actually we now need to close the road because the problem's bigger than we thought. And it does mean that, if we don't fix that challenge and get the utilities working in accordance with better practice, then all our good efforts in terms of that upfront communication are going to be to no benefit to all of us. But in terms of, placing controls and telling them what to do, then that's unfortunately not within any of our gift. All you can do as councillors is probably keep challenging them on their standards and try and encourage them to raise their performance and their standards of delivery on the island.
Thank you, Mr. Ashman. Councillor Critchinson.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but I thought better do. I think the main issue I get from people is the signage that the signage out there doesn't say where the road is closed. It sends them in one direction, sends them right round, but actually the bit that was closed, they could have got to the way they were going, and then they're sent a really long way round. And I think that obviously they're talking about things in Ryde as well. Obviously where I am, the roads are actually disappearing half the time as well. So it's not just closed, it's not even there anymore. So we've got extra things. So please feel for the people of Ventnor and areas, which we have done lots of work on with, obviously those in Wroxall were marooned for obviously almost half a year at one point. So it is a big challenge, but they did work with the community quite a lot on that. But I think the main thing is they're just, where is the road closed? We're not finding out, and maybe use the councillors' knowledge a lot more. We're sometimes the last to know, and actually we could have got the message out a lot earlier or helped with where the signage needs to be. And, we want to help. We want to be part of this process. And I think, I do a lot of triaging with people. And if I've let them know what's happening, that saves a lot of the problems that comes back. So I think it needs to be more two-way with us. We've got that knowledge on the ground again, like the town and parish councils, we're there dealing with these areas each day, and we know what will work. And some of the long-term things, I am getting asked that now, and that is really helping. But, you're on the bus and suddenly it's closed. That 2 hour doesn't help the people that can't get to work now because they are the next stop on, and I haven't been able to tell them. If I had been able to tell them, they know about it, and that would really help people trying to get to work, whatever it is. So please, we're a resource. Help it.
Very quickly, I think there's two aspects. Plan works, absolutely, where we are planning significant works and we've got some not knowledge of what's coming down the line. We do need to use the local ward councillors and the towns and parishes to better effect to help us manage those messages. I completely agree with what you're saying around triaging and how, but importantly, you can help us. Works will have to take place, but it's also the quality of communication that we get out to local communities and residents makes a massive difference. It is much more of a challenge with those more urgent works, but that's where we've got to really push for that. I've seen plenty of examples in a relatively short space of time where I won't go on and cite them, we'll take to, but the cascade of information and the choices, we're often playing catch up. And you're right, you get up in the morning, you get on the bus and you're trying to get to school, or you're trying to get to work, or you're trying to get to a medical appointment, and then you're faced with closures. And that is hard. It's really hard when you're faced with that, but we need to be better at cascade. We've got, there's a lot of opportunity now with social media. It's not just about physical signs. We need to be smarter in how we get that information out to the community. And I agree entirely around using yourself and town councils and parish councils to help us with that.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett's been very, very patiently waiting, and I've got one more question for Councillor Rafferty, and I've got a question myself, and then we'll wrap this bit up because I know we've got a lot to get through. I know some officers got to get ferries and things. So, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair, and yes, your colleagues and have all raised very, very important points. So I won't reiterate those other than what Councillor Critchison has just said. The importance of involving the ward members as soon as possible, and that's ward members both at the Isle of Wight Council level and at the town and parish council level. So a key thing from me is if we ask, please schedule a meeting with us. I had this twice because I had Horsebridge Hills diversion and one-way closure twice in my ward. I was asking for months on both of those and had minimal engagement, zero engagement effectively on the first one when I was asking, what are you planning to do? And what is being planned, what's being consulted on. I know one of those was obviously a developer's works and the other one was utilities works. But I don't want to labour that point. I really welcome what Mr. Moon is setting out in terms of a reset and a challenge. And I think one of the big challenges is to move everyone from just doing what the minimum that statute requires to doing what will minimise disruption and frustration and maximises goodwill. One of the things that I think could have been really helpful both times with Horsebridge Hill, is actually having a set of FAQs that I, as a councillor, when somebody contacts me, because I'm always the first person that's contacted, or invariably the first, so that I can understand why the decision has been made. For example, really explaining why two-way lights weren't considered on Horsebridge Hill and why it was a one-way closure and diversion. Eventually I got one that was quite satisfactory for the second time around, but not the first time around. So having those FAQs could minimise some of the frustration that residents feel and we as councillors feel when trying to respond to them. And that's easy to anticipate. It might also focus minds on what are the small things that get overlooked. So in my ward, residents in Nicholson Street and the roads off, and residents on Hogan Road and Close were effectively cut off or forced, whatever they chose to do, wanted to do. They had no choice but to go around the diversion. But some changes could have been made had they been consulted earlier on that. The other thing I think would be really important is post-works learning. So really understanding what happened, what could have been done better, and then push it back, if I may suggest to you, Chair, your committee. It's brilliant that you're having this element of democratic oversight today, and long may it continue. So that it's a bit like planning committee goes out on those site visits to best practice examples of good planning the whole way through. Maybe there is a way of bringing some of that learning through to committee level. And finally, Mr. Wells' slides showed what all of the works planned over a next 12-month period. Maybe there is a role without the transport, your committee just becoming a transport committee and rather operational, which it shouldn't, but to have more of an oversight and a horizon scanning look at that. Because one thing you, Chair, and I will have recognised is sometimes there's a need for respite. Newport suffered enough earlier this year with both Horsebridge Hill and Fairlea. Both were essential sets of works, but maybe there are better ways of coordinating just to understand where areas, and we've heard from colleagues from RIDE, where they could just be given a little bit of respite without necessarily cutting off anybody from doing works that need to be done across the island. Thank you very much, Chair, for your indulgence.
No, thank you. And did you want to respond? Does anyone want to respond to that?
I think it's a very good suggestion about doing a review. Councillor Garrett will have heard me say, Horsebridge Hill are just happening when I was arriving, or personally, I can see some things. I have relayed that to Southern Water, because they could have put much more resource at it and done that job a lot quicker than they did. So I won't score it out of 10, but they got some of it right, but they could have done a bit more. And I think that post-evaluation of what we're doing, lessons learned, is always good, no matter what we do, because it helps try and inform better ways in which we manage and coordinate roadworks going forward.
And recently with Carrollsbrook Road, we that Southern Water had planned works there for a very serious piece of work that was sort of urgent, but because of the Isle Festival, they managed to pull that back. So there does seem to be some movement in that, just to reflect. But then we had another sewer broke a few days later, so it was closed again. But they worked very quickly. That's obviously a main artery through Newport. Councillor Rafferty, I've got you. Now I'm going to finish up and we'll just do a roundup, and then we'll move on to the rest of our agenda, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's very, very quick. I just wanted to reiterate the things that are coming back that I'm getting, that I'm speaking to the residents and that, and where they feel most frustrated is that every time they try and get answers, it's either SGN or it's Island Roads, that they keep blaming each other and nobody ever has to be accountable. So they ask a question to Southern Water and they'll blame Island Roads. When are they going to get together and stop blaming each other and come up with real answers?
That's a fair comment. Yeah, if I wanted to sort of ask one more question, well, my question from me was we talked about the utility companies and how they're out of kilter with the national statistics. Obviously, we've got a patchwork of providers, haven't we, right across the country? And I was just wondering where our local providers are benchmarked with the rest of their colleagues, and are we looking at best practice from the best, and you know, you can learn from the worst as well. But also areas like thinking like Anglesey, you know, how they manage on Anglesey. They've got bridges, but they're still essentially, you don't really be going off one bridge and coming back another, do you? For roadworks. I was just wondering what, you know, the benchmarking we do within those parameters. I guess Mr. Wells, I think, is probably your, do you think, or anyone? So I'm pointing at you, Jimmy, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I think the challenge is, and you know, Simon alluded to it, the only way to get compliance is enforcement, and enforcement's not easy. There is enforcement, and Simon touched on under the Traffic Management Act that the authority could take against utilities. Section 60, off the top of my head, duty to operate is one of them. It's a step towards legal action towards a utility company. You know, I watched Full Council the other evening because you know, that's the position I find myself in, is watching that. And I found it really interesting that actually, you know, there is a real ambition to fix this. And, you know, Steve touched on it. We're not going back to, you know, your question as far as compliance is concerned. It shouldn't really matter what they do in Anglesey. I can't replicate that because they're different businesses. Southern Water are the only water provider here. You know, there's SSE. I can only control them, and I can only control them with the limited powers under the permit scheme. But Island Roads will support the Isle of Wight Council and our colleagues in that team as much as we possibly can, as far as any kind of enforcement action that needs to be taken and getting those things across the line. But that's not to say it's an easy feat, because there is a requirement on the highway authority or on Island Roads to help gather that evidence to prove that it wasn't an emergency. So, Councillor Kirby, you mentioned earlier about a water leak that's been there for 2 weeks. If that comes to us as a loss of supply, it's a legitimate reason for an emergency. This is the challenge that we have. It's the utility companies playing off of, well, Island Roads are telling us this and it's Island Roads' fault, and I can't control what they tell you. But what I can control is the communication that you receive from Island Roads. You know, and I think that councillors, you're all aware, and there's a great contact that I have within Island Roads, and I'm fortunate enough to have her as part of my team, Samantha O'Rourke. Sam will tell you what is happening and why. It may not be what you want to hear, but you can guarantee she will tell you, as blunt as may be sometimes. You know, she's a lot flowerier than I am in her responses, but she will tell you what's happening, and she will tell you how we've got to where we are. I think the challenge is that collectively we need to find a way forward to hold those utilities to account. If that means enforcement action, that's a decision that needs to then be made, and we will support in that by all means. Communications, we're taking steps with the resource that we have allocated towards communication to communicate with you as best as possible. And as I've said in various different forums, there's always improvements that can be made. And we're not anti that. We just need to look at, in reality, what does that improvement look like? What is the implication of that improvement? Is it a resource requirement that needs to be addressed between us and the Isle of Wight Council? And, you know, as one team trying to manage the highway network, actually, what does that combined resource level look like? And, you know, collectively, how do we overcome this situation? It's very easy to point fingers, and we all need to try and move away from that. And actually, what I will say on behalf of some of the utility companies is the planned communications on their major schemes goes far in excess of what they need to do. And Southern Water may not communicate and may have a high level of emergency works, but actually on a lot of their planned works, and I know that Councillor Garrett may not agree, but actually they go far and above what is required of them as far as communication on major works that concern that are planned. And I'm pleased that they're continuing to do that, and we'll continue to work with them with that. So if we can get them to apply that on emergencies, then, you know, the scrutiny should hopefully die down. But I just wanted to confirm that, you know, the commitment is there.
Well, I was going to invite the rest of our Island Roads team and the officer want to just round up, and then we'll move on. So, Mr. Ashman, thank you.
Yeah, just picking up on those themes there. I think we've got to get to a point where we pull all of these challenges together. So Jimmy's mentioned that to properly plan works on our network, we're talking about 2027. you know, and if a utility company's got stuff to do, you know, does that become the challenge to them, that actually there are so many constraints on this network that to follow a proper process means they can't get their job done. So therefore, potentially they are utilising other routes to get there, i.e., you know, emergency approach. I think Simon's comparisons with stuff that happens over in Southampton, Hampshire, etc., is good. We do need to recognise that it's a slightly different dynamic. I have worked right across the South Coast as well. And simple things, for example, like the ability to get hot material to do reinstatements over weekends and at night is far more easy to achieve across the South Coast than it is on this island. So if you have a restriction on a utility, their ability to actually fulfill that obligation can be challenging on the island. We face the same challenges ourselves. So I think if we are going to fix this, we do need to come together. I really welcome, you know, lifting the bonnet on a few of these previous ones, because I think the challenges are a little bit wider than we're currently talking about. So I would sort of welcome the detailed reviews that Councillor Garrett suggested. That, you know, let's look at previous ones. Let's understand all the factors that contributed to where we got to, and see what we can jointly do to address those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fellows, you've been sat there very quietly, or did you anything you wanted to add, Eddie?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm listening and pleased to hear all the comments and the feedback, because I think we have to acknowledge that there is a problem on the island with the impact that works have on traffic, and how that impacts all of the communities, business communities, residents, people going to various different appointments and whatever that get quite severely impacted. We've heard Jimmy talk about all of the challenges and the constraints that are on him and his team in being able to manage. There's only certain powers that he's got, and there's only certain things that he can directly influence. But Island Roads, I guarantee to everyone, is up for the challenge jointly, and that's jointly with Simon and Michelle and the authorities team, and with the utilities, to try and make an impact into that and reduce the traffic impact of works across the island. One of the things that hasn't really been mentioned is the work that Steve and Jimmy are doing through Island Hawk. So that's where the Highway Authorities and Utilities Committee come together. We've got our own local version of that, Island Hawk. And all of this information is then fed back into into that forum with things, and I recall Steve's very last slide from the last meeting. If ever there were a time to improve your performance, the time is now. Or words to that effect, Steve. I might not have quoted you exactly right, but that's the challenge to the utilities. But we in order to get some of these improvements that we would all like to see, and I think of Councillor Critchison's comments about the roadwork signing doesn't tell you where the road's closed. It doesn't tell you who's closing the road. It just says road ahead closed. Where is it? All of the utilities are operating under national standards, so they have to apply those minimum national standards. I think we can influence them and get them to work in some areas above those standards. Jimmy mentioned Southern Water's planned works, where they're actually very, very good at it, and they do go over and above. Getting the utilities to go over and above on all of their works, and to reduce the amount of use of immediate emergency works, will be a challenge. But we have got a commitment from Southern Water, because they are at circa 70% emergency. They made a commitment to aim to get down to 30%, which would be a massive, massive change. But we've got to do that jointly with them. There's only limited actions that we can take in enforcement, and what we don't want is we don't want to get into a battle with the utilities. We want to work with them, encourage them, and all the evidence that you're giving is helpful to us to be able to play out to them to say, look, this is the impact that your company is having, and these are the things we think that you could do better. And we will take all of the information that you're feeding into us. So thanks very much for all the information tonight, and we'll make sure that we build that into plans that we can agree jointly.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being so candid and all the information you shared, and thank you committees for all the questions. Some really good questions we got on today. That and hopefully that our residents will be listening and knowing that we are on it completely. And I think I speak on behalf of the committee, but we would really like to have regular updates at our committee, and with our maybe some briefings as well, just to have those. So we can be assured that that we are moving forward on these, and obviously it's one of our top mailbag items. I'm sure all of us is the highway. So thank you again. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to invite Mrs. Love to present B and C, the local transport plan grant funding 26-27, and the concessionary travel update as a verbal update. So I understand Mr. Chandler's not unable to be with us last minute. So over to you, Mrs. Love.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Chandler for providing the information. He's due to go on leave, so he's trying to get everything sorted out before he goes. You'll be pleased to know these are very brief, unless you all suddenly have lots of questions that you want to ask me. So for the local transport delivery plan, so for those new councillors, I'll just give a very brief overview. The way that our capital funding for schemes on the highway is allocated to us is through obviously the Department for Transport. So we receive a certain amount of money every year. That used to be called local transport plan funding, so LTP funding. It is linked to the strategic document, which is the Island Transport Plan. So that was approved at full council in February this year. That gives us the blueprint for what we would like to achieve within the transport sector on the island for the next 10 to 20 years. That then drills down to an operational implementation plan, which obviously councillors have a lot more input into, and we use the information that is gathered by our colleagues in Island Roads through the Network Integrity Register, etc., to help us determine where we should prioritise spending that money, and that comes to you. So that is collated together in a local transport delivery plan. At the last meeting, we were asked for confirmation when that will be submitted for your discussion and approval. So the update that I have today is that will come to the September meeting. So that is the 3rd of September. We will have that local transport delivery plan. Obviously, it will be circulated prior. We're likely to do an engagement session about it, and then you can review and obviously ask questions. We'll go through the prioritisation methodology with you. So that's the first update. Unless there are any questions, I'll continue. No. Okay, the second update is the concessionary travel update. So the concessionary travel is the amount that the council pays to Southern Vectors in order to pay them for the concessionary passes. So when you receive your bus pass, when you're over 65, I believe now. I'm sure none of us in this room are anywhere close to receiving the bus passes. If we have the carers allowance, etc. So every year we negotiate a rate of reimbursement that's based on the Department for Transport's reimbursement methodology. And the confirmation, so when we brought this to committee earlier in the year, I believe it was around January, February, approval was given for the consultation and agreement of the rate. So to close that off, the rate that we pay per concessionary journey has been agreed at £1.92. So this equates to a 3.2% increase to the rate per journey from 25-26, but was agreed based on the DFT's DFT's reimbursement methodology. So an amount of money is set aside in the budget, and obviously our colleagues in finance will monitor that, because the repayment is obviously dependent on the amount of journeys taken. So that rounds off that question that was given to us at an earlier committee meeting. Obviously, if you have any questions about how concessionary travel is run, how it's put together, then do by all means come back to myself or Mr. Chandler, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you.
Councillor Stewart. Thank you, Mr. Slough. Thank you for that.
Very briefly, I mean, obviously we've heard the recent announcement from the new incarnation of a government about £2 bus fares. I'm just wondering how that will impact us here on the island.
Well, the Prime Minister has obviously issued that he would like £2 fare cap to come back into national circulation, because he retained it within Greater Manchester when the fare cap went up to £3 a journey. Obviously, we as a council recognise that that will have a positive impact on our residents. That's a £4 for a return journey as opposed to sort of £6. Southern Vectis, who are our bus provider on the island, do offer other sort of season ticket type discounts, but for your standard hop on, hop off, that will reduce it by £2. When we get the further guidance down from government about when they want it implemented, if there are any conditions. It's the 1st of January, thank you. My assistant there. So it's so yeah, from the 1st of January. So obviously we will have to factor that into the budget, because there obviously is a change to that. So we will look at, we'll obviously liaise with our colleagues in finance, and that will be brought forward in the 27-28 budget.
Thank you. Just to finish on the bus usage. Obviously, it's one of our papers there. Page 17, where bus usage is going up. So it'd be good to see that you do that.
It is very positive.
Yes, Councillor Pritchson.
So while we're on concessionary fares, I know there's a concessionary for under 15-year-olds that's for April, and not April, August.
5 to 15-year-olds. Yeah, travel free.
I think a lot of residents are asking questions about how that's actually going to work, and Southern Vectis have said they're still waiting for details, and obviously that's not very far away. And I think it would be really good if we could get some sort of press on that, because obviously people are going, do they need to be with a paying adult? Do they not? Obviously, you know, 15-year-olds generally go out on their own, and yeah, we could do with some guidance. I'm getting that feedback from parents. So
okay. Yeah, no, I completely agree, because obviously if there needs to be some sort of proof of age or something like that, then obviously, you know, we will need to ensure that that information goes out. Let me check with Mr. Chandler, and I will provide a response back through the chair.
Thank you. Yes, because I believe there isn't a proof of age, but then there might be, and it's getting very confusing out on the ground. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get that to you as soon as possible. I'll check with Stuart. I think, to my knowledge, because I did see some initial press releases drawn up and prepared, ready to go, but we were also waiting for further information. So I'll check with him as to whether that further information has come through, and make sure we get that information circulated round. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So if there's no more questions on those two items, we'll move on to community work plan. So it's considering our upcoming programme of work. So that's at the end of our paper, as you can see there. There is a meeting that's not listed in ours. You'll see there's a gap between September and January. We do have a meeting on 29th of October. Just to let you know that. So you can see the concessionary travel reviews coming in January, as we were told. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, just checking that we sent out with them services. Obviously, the new invitation.
Yes, we have a meeting. We just don't have. Yeah,
that's great. Okay.
Yeah, I've just double checked on that, because because we haven't got. I'm sure we will fill it up very, very quickly. So as you can see, we've got have the update on the car parks. I can't see when the floating bridge. That's September.
So we did discuss that at the agenda management session. So we can bring that either to the September meeting or the following meeting after that. whichever is most sort of preferred option by the committee.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to just put items into our work plan during the committee. We can suggest during briefing sessions and during our agenda settings, we can bring things forward there. So there's nothing that's burning that anyone can think of right now. This is our basis of our work going forward. I don't know if we want to put in there regular updates on the partnership working on our highways, whether that needs to be put there as an update for October, maybe, just a suggestion. Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add something to our work plan, if possible, around economic development. I mean, it's a fairly wide topic, and Mr. Minns is obviously leading on that. I won't sort of go into the detail at this stage, but I believe that given all sort of changes that have happened and where we are with the problems with transport and businesses, it might be a good time to actually look at how we can support business more generally, existing businesses, and also, of course, investment. You have a long experience in that and have been very involved in a lot of things in that area, as some of the rest of us have. But I do think that it is time that we had a more strategic look at it as a committee to see how we can, build up the economy of the island, which is the underpinning of everything that we do.
Thank you. I think what would be good if we look at our, because we've got lots of new members, look at the current economic development plan through the lens of our new authority, combined authority, because obviously there'll be more money drawing down. It'd be nice to put those two things together, I think, really, see what we can do regionally. Within, of course, I've got Councillor Llewellyn in my ear, within our resources that we have, but there's ways you can help. Don't necessarily, you can be advocates and champions and conveners. We don't always have to put money out. You wanted to talk about our meeting?
No, I just wanted to say that since that's been printed,
yeah,
you've got the TRO for Forest Hills coming back in September. If you recall from last time, it was deferred.
I tried to forget about that.
So I've been asked to put that on for September, which has been done since that was
okay. That TRO, you may have read about it in the minutes. Forest Hills that'll be coming back in September, so we better bring some sandwiches for September, I think. Yeah, Councillor Cameron.
On previous committees agreed to add the coastal and beach access and its impact on the tourist economy. Can that be brought back?
Really, really important. Thank you for raising that. So that was in the previous minutes. Maybe October, maybe, but
absolutely valid. I think there is something. What will be considered by the Environment Community Protection Committee next week will be some elements of the new infrastructure, coastal defence infrastructure for the Bay Area. I'm keen that also comes into the sphere of this committee because of the impacts on regeneration, economic development, and essentially infrastructure. So we don't just look. So we may be able to do a presentation, a verbal briefing in the autumn with colleagues from the Environment Agency, because I think it's really important that this committee understands that we don't just look through the lens of it being a seawall. That how can it be a catalyst for wider economic regeneration and development? So. But I think that then also ties in with your suggestion as well, Councillor Cameron. And just to pick up on
I'd also like to put that on there, maybe for October, if that's a timely time for it. But I was also thinking about how we can, cross work with other committees, and maybe a committee with more the Health Wellbeing Board. We never seem to have discussions with them. Public health, could we invite our Director of Public Health to a meeting, have a topic that, for our sports and leisure, for instance, or any of our, culture. So I think that's important that we understand how work that we cover underpins the work that they're doing, that one island approach. With me, aren't you?
Yep,
yes,
absolutely
yeah.
agreeing with you. I'm just reaffirming the point about economic development as well. I think that will be timely when in the autumn or towards the end of this year, because I think I've certainly taken a view and will have discussed with a number of you around the room some ideas and some thoughts on that. So I think that will also be relevant.
Great. And we will at the end of the meeting we'll arrange a date. We do have the EGM sometime in August, which will find an agreeable date to talk about the destination the DBID destination, the business improvement destination business improvement district, which is Visit Isle of Wight in all other names. I've got some questions now. I'm just wondering if I could go to one question first, which is a bit more, needs a bit more work, I think. It came in from Councillor Jarman. We have got Iron Roads in the room. I didn't know this while you're still here, whether I just read the question out and the response I've got so far. But maybe while you're here, we can maybe see how further information can be gathered to answer Councillor Jarman's question fully. So I'm not sure we've quite captured it here. I don't know if we've got, I can pass. Have you got, is there a spare written question from Councillor Jarman I could pass around to one of our Iron Roads colleagues so they can just see it rather than, yeah, lovely, thank you. So I'll read the question out. Yes, on to members' questions now, sorry, I hadn't realised. So this is regarding the performance that we've already, performance improvement paper we looked at. So please specify separately for each highways claim or dispute or PFI contractual claim or dispute over the past 24 months, the amount paid for external legal advice, consultancy support, settlement or compensation to the contractors or public. I'm just going to read out the question that Slav kindly has put together, but I think it needs a bit more, as much as we're able. I'm not sure how much more we're able to add to it, given some of it may be commercially confidential. So the answer we have, thank you, Mr. Love. Thank you for your question. As part of the Highways Maintenance PFI contract, Island Roads have the responsibility and liability for the Section 58 Highways Act 1980 defence. Section 58 provides a statutory defence for highway authorities against claims for damages arising from failure to maintain a highway, if they can prove they took reasonable care to prevent danger. Island Roads provide this function, including payment for any legal advice required and compensation paid as part of the unitary charge, and there is no additional cost to the Isle of Wight Council. So I just wasn't... Eddie, you're going to come to my rescue, aren't you? Thank you.
Thank you. One of the advantages of being in a highways PFI is that the council has been able to transfer that risk. So the risk of the cost of legal advice, the risk of claims payout is all taken by Island Roads, and it's managed by Steve and Jimmy and the team to actually reduce that risk to a minimum, because that's commercially advantageous if they can manage to keep that as low as possible. And in order to do that, all the good work that they do in ensuring that all the inspections are done on time, all the defects are accurately identified to criteria, and then there's a responsive service to carry out any repairs on time, and there's a facility in place for the public to report any defects that they identify. And if we've got all of those in place, then usually we can run a successful defence, and most often without legal advice on a claim by claim basis. There'll obviously be some commercial sensitivities around some of the numbers of both Ringway Island Roads and Island Road Services Limited. But there will be some information that can be shared in terms of numbers of claims that are handled and settled and the like. Yeah.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. So is it possible that if Commissioner Slav, are we able to send the question over to and get some, or what information we're able to share so we can just fully answer Councillor Jarman's question?
Yeah, of course. I'll liaise with my colleagues at IRSL and Island Roads. I did, obviously, Councillor Jarman's question came in yesterday, and it probably, this is a sort of fairly significant piece of work, so that's why we weren't able to provide maybe as much detail as we'd like in the first instance. But yes, absolutely happy to sit and work out what can be shared, and obviously share that to Councillor Jarman and as a response to the committee.
Thank you, because yeah, I think it's worth pointing out, it came in 30 hours ago, so it's a lot of work to be able to return around for this committee, but hopefully Councillor Jarman will be satisfied that we have given partial answer, and there'll be more information coming. So, right, I've got two more questions, and I'll do them in order of receipt, and that is from Councillor Becca Cameron. Would you like to ask your question, please, Councillor Cameron?
Hi, Chair. At the March meeting, members were advised that the design for the A3055, the Military Road, safety barriers at Freshwater Bay were being commissioned imminently. Please confirm, 1, the date on which the design commission was awarded, 2, whether the design has now been completed, and if not, the contractual completion date, 3, whether the necessary dispensation and approvals have been secured, including the date of each approval, 4, the confirmed funding allocation and funding construction window, and 5, the installation date for the flashing warning lights and sensor-based monitoring equipment. Please provide specific dates rather than a general assurance that the scheme is progressing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cameron. So I'll read out the response that we've got, which again officers have brought together. Quite a lot of technical information and specifics there, but I'm not going to dare to try and read out the chart that is, but you have that in front of you. Just yes, I think that would make it more confusing. Thank you for your question. I can confirm the following points. The date on which the design commission was awarded. The original design commission for provision of a vehicle restraint system, associated monitoring equipment and warning sign upgrade was issued to Rigway Island Roads on the 13th of July 2025. The detailed design has now been completed, and with associated planning condition discharge application having been submitted on the 30th of June 2026 to local planning authority for their formal review. The condition discharge application was validated by the local planning authority on the 1st of July 2026, with a public consultation date concluding on the 22nd of July 2026, after which local planning authority has until the 25th of August 2026 to determine and issue its decision. A budget allocation of £400,000 has been assigned to the delivery, design and subsequent accrual of the works. There is no specific funding construction window associated with the project, whereby, subject to condition discharge consent being issued by the local planning authority, the scheme will be delivered at the earliest opportunity and within this financial year. Based on current lead-in times associated with the manufacturing of the proposed VRS system, an indicative delivery date of January 2027 has been provided by Rinchway Island Roads. It is proposed that the upgrade to the existing advanced warning signs and the installation of additional monitoring equipment in the form of an extensometer will be delivered in parallel with the VRS system to minimise the impact on network users. Currently subject to the LPA issuing its conditional discharge approval notice by the end of August, 20th of August, the works are to be delivered in January 2027. I say you should all have the plan there with you. Thank you for your question. I've got one last question, and that is from Councillor Claire Critchton. Would you like to read your question?
Thank you, Chair. I think actually it's probably more like 2 questions, so thank you for indulging me with that. I have asked about the speed review. I know it's our long-awaited speed review, and now residents waited that long to find out which areas would be included in that, and now they want to see when they're going to see the identified areas. So I'd like to request a timeline for the completion of the speed review priority areas already identified, one of which is the Whitwell Road to Ventnor, and the road has recently again had further accidents on it, and the speed limit does not reflect the road layout and leads to many driving faster than is safe on the stretch of road, as is identified in the review. Residents want to know when the consultation will take place, as many would like the limits to be lower than is suggested in the review and the speed limit changes to extend to Godsill. And on top of that, I receive many requests for speed limit reduction on the rural village roads. Weekly, if not daily, it feels like I get some of that. So could the highways team advise how they would like residents to report their concerns about the roads in their area to ensure they are considered for future reviews and changes, and whether they're able as part of this, and how that process needs to work so that we are doing it in the correct way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. So I've got a response here, again, helpfully provided by the officers who work on this area day in, day out. So the previously agreed recommendations of the island-wide speed limit review are being progressed by the recently appointed project manager. Though due to the scale of proposals and estimated 45-year delivery period, they are being prioritised into a meaningful programme. Addressing some of the existing anomalies on the network and rural speed limits are being included within the initial phase, and these will be easier to implement, with anticipated progress in the next 6 to 12 months. With later phases focus on more complex proposals that require specific engineering measurements to manage traffic speeds to ensure conformity to a revised speed limit. In the interim, we do anticipate requests for further amendments, and these shall be assessed annually to determine if they need to be prioritised in future reviews or as standalone. To start this process, these requests should be submitted to Island Roads as the Highways PFI service provider via their email info@islandroads.com or via Fix My Street app. Thank you for your question. So thank you. Sorry, thank you. We have come to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for all your excellent questions and for really, I think we've got underneath, especially the Iron Roads one, which I think residents have been looking forward to us asking about, and it's what we've been talking about since January, since April. Really, the main meeting of this meeting. So I think we have delivered what we said we were going to do. So thank you for everybody for coming. And after when we finish the recording, which we're going to finish now, so thank you everyone for coming tonight. We're going to go offline now because we need to fix a date for our emergency meeting. And do you have some suggested? Just try and turn that off, yeah.